Hello, hello. Hi, guys. Jamie here. Hope you guys are doing well. Introducing myself again for those who don't know me, but most of you do probably. I'm Jamie Trull. I am a CPA turned financial literacy coach and profit strategist. I teach financial literacy typically to business owners who are sometimes solopreneurs. Maybe you have a few employees, you're growing your business and want to understand your finances better so that you can make and keep more money. That's really what I do. But these days, we have pivoted over the last month or so almost entirely into stimulus. How can you get money now? How can you get help for your business in the middle of what's going on right now, which is the coronavirus pandemic? Okay. So I'm recording this on May 1st of 2020. Important to note that because if you're watching this later on, it's important for you to know that things are changing. So I will tell you what I know as of today, but new things are coming out daily. So I'm really trying to keep people updated. Check back for updates. Make sure that you're in my Financial Literacy for Women Business Owners Facebook group. That's really, really important. That we are taking men as well. So if you don't fit the demographic, it's okay. Come on in. We have plenty of men that have joined over the last month or so. So come on over there because we're having all of these discussions and more over in that group. This video is also streaming live to YouTube and it is streaming live into my Balance CFO Facebook page. So wherever you're watching me, say hey, let me know you're here. This one is going to be specifically for sole proprietors, LLCs, and independent contractors. So I've been going live routinely. You guys know that. But ultimately, there are a lot of rules that are going on right now. And so I really wanted to do something really specific just to those of you who fall into that category, because I think it can get really confusing when you're trying to compare to somebody who's an S Corp owner, who has a completely different requirements under a lot of this stuff and totally different, potentially even things that are open to them than you do. So I think there's been some confusion also as to what can sole proprietors, what can single member LLCs and independent contractors actually get right now, because it seems like there's a lot of focus around jobs and employers. So let's break all of that down right now, and then feel free to ask me your questions, because I think I've seen a ton of questions coming through. And so I just figured it'd be easier than, going through, and I am answering questions in the group. Of course, you guys have seen me. That's basically my life these days, is just answering your questions in the group as much as I can. But sometimes it's easier to just jump on here live and talk about it. So let's quickly run through, and then you guys can start asking me your questions, which I know you have some, but let's run through what is available to a sole proprietor LLC independent contractor right now. What are your options? You're in a situation where perhaps you are mandated to shut down, or you just wouldn't have any business even if you weren't mandated to shut down. So you've decided to stay closed, or maybe you're making small amounts of sales here and there, but it's nothing like what it was previously. And you're wondering, what am I supposed to do right now? I don't even have money to pay my bills. This is my main source of income. What do I do? What is open to me? So the different avenues I want to talk to you about today, specifically related to business ownership. There are other avenues, like you'll get your stimulus check, hopefully, things like that are open to everyone. But let's talk about what's specifically open to sole proprietors, LLCs, and independent contractors. And I say that as if those are different things. They're really not. So let's start there firstly, just to make sure we're all on the same page about who I'm talking about, right? Technically, if you're an independent contractor, you file taxes as a sole proprietor. Same thing if you're an LLC and you have not elected S Corp status, okay? You file as a sole proprietor. So there's been some crazy words and everything out there in this legislation that is very confusing to me as an accountant. When you're trying to parse out separately independent contractors from sole proprietors from LLCs, from a tax perspective, you're all the same, meaning your income is passed through to you, and you file a Schedule C. And I bet there are a lot of you guys who had no clue what a Schedule C was before all of this craziness. And all of a sudden, you can quote your Schedule C line 31 net profit off the top of your head because of what's going on right now, right? You probably had no idea you were a Schedule C filer even potentially before all of this. But that's what I mean by sole proprietor. You file on a Schedule C. It's part of your individual income tax return. So that's who I'm talking to when I talk about sole proprietors. That means you're filing that Schedule C. You don't have like a corporate income tax return to do. You have a Schedule C that is all it is, right, is your income that you made in your business minus your deductible expenses equals your net profit. And you're probably much more familiar with that than you were a month ago, right? That's kind of how it works. And you're taxed off of that net profit. That net profit is what basically makes its way into your personal tax return and is taxed at your rates. It doesn't matter what you actually take out of your business. That's not how you're taxed as a sole proprietor. It is about what your net profit is. Regardless of whether you leave that in the business or you take it out, you are taxed on your net profit. Okay. So that's different than a corporation in some cases. So I just want to make sure that people understand that, because I'm getting a lot of questions around, what's considered income for a sole proprietor, and does it matter what you actually take out of your business? Some of you guys, right, when we talk about taking money out of your business, are like, I don't even know what that means because I've used the same bank account for everything, right? Which I don't recommend. And I think that this is a great time for those of you who have just run everything through like a personal bank account. This is a great time to go get set up and have a business bank account and run all your business income, all your business expenses out of it. If nothing else, it makes taxes way easier, but it also makes it much easier to kind of be able to see what's happening in your business. It makes bookkeeping much easier. It makes understanding how much you're actually making in your business, because if you're commingling that all together with your personal, you might not even have any idea what your profit is until you go to do your taxes at the end of the year. And that's one of the problems that people have run into in the midst of this, is they're like, I haven't done my taxes and I don't have anything to really go by to even know what my net profit is. So I do recommend, if you're in that spot, definitely make sure you have a business account. Definitely make sure you're fully separating it from personal. If you are an LLC, you have to do that. And the reason I say that is because if you're an LLC and you're not separating business and personal, right, and you're running everything through the same accounts, what's going to happen is, if you were ever sued, right, you're an LLC probably because you are trying to protect yourself legally, such that you would protect your own personal assets in the case that somebody sues you. If you are commingling business and personal funds, and I'm going to use this, is the only time I promise I will use a jargony legal term right now, but it's called piercing the corporate veil. All right, jargon alert, piercing the corporate veil. If you ever hear that, it just means that basically you, even though you're not a corporation, right, as an LLC, you are essentially not putting up that curtain between your business and personal. Therefore, the whole idea of an LLC that protects you personally, right, is invalidated, because somebody can say, well, they shouldn't get that personal protection from their LLC because they treat everything the same. So make sure, if you're an LLC, you definitely are treating it all separately. You're running only business expenses through business accounts and vice versa, right? Even if you have those two separate, a lot of people aren't fully separate, right? There might be some things that they run through personal and then they get the business deduction. It gets a little bit hairy. But for the most part, pretty much all of your expenses that are fully business related need to be running through your business. Sorry, that was a little diatribe that I went on, but it is something that has been something I've been noticing in this scenario. Is a lot of you guys might be in a place where you're like, shoot, I gotta get on top of all this stuff right now because I haven't really been in the past. So I'm not selling anything right now, but I do have courses that I do sell that I think can help you with that. So, keep following the Facebook page if you're interested in that, because we will be launching something a little later when this hopefully gets a little bit better. There will be opportunities for me to kind of help you get organized with all of this. But okay, let's talk super quick about 3 different things that are open to you guys as sole proprietors for stimulus, okay? Unemployment. For many of you guys who are sole proprietors, this may be the best option. Especially if your net profit, right, on your Schedule C, if your net profit is under $50,000, roughly. And that is a very rough estimate because it really does depend on the states. Some states are more, some states give more in unemployment benefits than others. But in general, if you make under $50,000, you're probably going to do better on unemployment. There are some exceptions to that for sure. But what I mean by unemployment too is you file for unemployment through your state, and then you would be eligible for what's called pandemic unemployment assistance, PUA. You've probably seen that and you're like, what the heck is PUA? That's the extension of unemployment that people who typically are not qualified for unemployment, like self-employed people, you don't pay, as a sole proprietor, you don't pay unemployment insurance. You normally would not be covered under unemployment because you're not paying into it. But because of what's going on right now, you actually are. Okay, so you actually are covered by it under PUA. In a lot of cases, you have to apply, get rejected by your state, then you apply for PUA through your state. It just depends. You have to check your state's FAQs. A lot of states are not up and running yet on PUA. It's taking a long time. Some people have started to be able to apply. Others haven't. Check the Facebook page for people who have gone through this process, because it's a challenge and all the states are different in how they're rolling it out, and all the states are different in their rules. But ultimately, you should be able to apply for unemployment. And the reason, typically unemployment isn't usually that lucrative, right? Like usually unemployment, I mean, in Tennessee, for instance, you max out at $275 a week. So if you're a higher wage earner, like it doesn't make a lot of sense. But through the CARES Act, there's a new $600 a week. That's not PUA. So I think there's also confusion around, is PUA the $600? No. Everybody gets the $600. That is FPUC, Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation. That's another part of the CARES Act that gives an extra $600 for everybody who qualifies through unemployment, whether through regular state unemployment or through PUA. This $600, it lasts through the end of July. Okay. Now, here's a reason as a sole proprietor, you may not be able to get unemployment, right? You may not be if you are still making a decent amount of money in your business. And by that, I typically mean, it varies by state what they mean. Doesn't necessarily mean revenue into your business, but it either means kind of like gross profit, i.e. if you're making a product, right? It's the revenue that comes in minus your cost of sales, minus those direct costs. If you're making more than the minimum, and again, it varies by state what that minimum is, you may make too much to qualify for benefits, in which case, if you don't qualify for any state benefits, you also don't qualify for the extra $600. So I've gotten that question a lot. That's like, okay, well, wait, if I don't qualify for state benefits, will I still get the $600? No, you have to qualify for at least $1 of state benefits in order to get the $600. Okay. And by what I mean by state benefits is through PUA, you will get a minimum. If you're self-employed and you're applying through PUA and you're accepted, you get a minimum of 1/2. This just gets so complicated, right? 1/2 of the state's weekly average benefit amount. It's different for every state. In some states, it's like $150. In some states, it's like $500. It just depends. I have a chart I can post as well under here that actually shows you an estimate of what that half weekly average benefit number is. But remember, so that may not be a lot, but remember, you also get the extra $600. So when you add it all together, if you're making under $50,000 as a sole proprietor, that's probably better for you, right? That's probably a good situation. You might be actually even making more than you were previously. But you do need to claim any income you make against it. And the way that they're defining income does change depending on the state. In some states, they're saying basically you can subtract, a bunch of your, pretty much almost all of your operating costs, right, against the income. So as long as you are not making a profit in that week, right, then you can't, then it wouldn't count as income for unemployment and it wouldn't disqualify you. So you can be making a little bit, right? You can still be making some sales and apply for unemployment. But that's one of the reasons that you might, if you think you're making too much, that you're not going to apply for, that you're not going to qualify for unemployment, then unemployment might not be the best route to go for you. And in which case we'll talk about the PPP loan for you. Let me just look. So yeah, it says in net income for PUA. I wonder, I have been looking through the state FAQs to determine if that means, so that's what it requires when you're applying. The question is when you have to certify weekly how much income you make, which is what you will have to do, right? You have to tell them if you're making income, and then they will, and and then they will subtract that, right, from your benefits. And in some states, I mean, I've heard some states as low as like you can't make more than like $50 in other income and still qualify for benefits. So it's a thin line. In some states, it's more. In some states, it may be several hundred. So you just have to kind of check to see with your state what that is, and if you think your current income that's coming in is going to invalidate you. Okay, so that's really how it's working for unemployment. And for a lot of sole proprietors, that's the best route, right? That you can make, in some cases, more than you were making before, and especially through the end of July. Now, after July, when that $600, if they don't renew that, if this thing is still going and they don't renew that, unemployment will become like the significantly less lucrative, we'll say, after that $600 drops off. But until then, it might be the best option for a lot of people. So in most cases, what I'm seeing is this, that you don't have like so if you're applying through PUA, now if you're applying through regular unemployment insurance, yes, there is a minimum you need to hit. And I think it does vary by state, but there's a minimum you need to hit of income. It does not appear that's the case with self-employed. And unless your state may be putting a minimum on it, but unless they are, you would get it in a lot of cases, even if you were in a net loss position last year. So even if you lost money, like net income wise, net profit wise, you may still be eligible for unemployment benefits, right? So, and again, it would be that minimum, you would get the minimum, which is half the weekly average benefits plus the 600. So that's why I say, like, that's the first thing to look at. Now, here's the problem a lot of people are coming into is like, they've been trying to apply for unemployment and it's not been going through. And a lot of these states are taking a while. And so until you get that approval and know like, okay, I'm good, there's that fear that something's going to happen, you're not going to get it. And so that's why I think a lot of people have flocked, even who might be better on unemployment, have flocked over to the PPP loan, because it's kind of the bird in hand, right, is worth two in the foot. Is that it? I don't know. 2 in the bush. I don't know. I feel like I said that totally wrong. But basically it's like kind of a take what you can get situation. And I think this is the difficulty a lot of sole proprietors are running into is like, okay, well, PUA is probably better for me, maybe, but what if I have additional income that's still coming in? Is that going to invalidate me? And for PPP, it's completely fine. You can have additional unemployment or additional income coming in and not have it invalidate you. And some people are like, well, I haven't even gotten unemployment yet, and I just got offered a PPP loan. Shouldn't I take it? Right? So that's a question for you, kind of as a business owner. You have to look at your own situation and see if it's equal and you haven't gotten unemployment yet, or if it's close to equal and you haven't gotten unemployment yet, and they offer you a PPP loan. I would take it. Right? Now, PPP is going to have some more hoops you got to jump through on the back end. So we got to remember that too, right? Unemployment, they give you the money, it's yours. You get to keep it. Awesome. You know, there's no back end forgiveness. It's yours. PPP is yours conditionally if you use it correctly. Now, as a sole proprietor, the rules around that are different. So let me just real quick, I'm going to go through. Okay, good. It's in the bush. That's what I thought. I said foot. I don't know why I don't know. 2 in the bush. I think that's right. Let me go through and look at questions for unemployment, and then I'm going to jump over and talk about PPP, because there are some specifics with PPP as it relates to sole proprietors that I want to talk to you guys about. And yes, you do qualify for PPP as a sole proprietor, and I'll get to that. But a lot of people thought, well, I don't have any employees, so this does not apply to me. It absolutely does. So 2019 taxes, PPP is probably going to require that. A lot of states are asking for it as well. Not every state is requiring it. I would go ahead and get it done though. I mean, I would just get it done. So, I mean, go find a tax preparer to do it quickly, right? I mean, this is something you're going to have to do it anyway. It doesn't mean you don't have to pay. If you owe on your taxes, you don't have to pay until July, but you can still file them so that you have them, okay? And so that you can go use them for these loan applications for unemployment, all of that. Not every state's requiring it for unemployment. Some of them are just giving you the minimum benefits. But if you want to qualify for more than the minimum benefits, you'll need to have your 2019 tax return done. Okay. So how do I find out what our state allows? Like, do I subtract rent and utilities before I have to claim? Check your state's FAQs. That is the best place to look. almost every state at this point has like a COVID-19 specific FAQ or a PUA specific FAQ. A lot of them also have great walkthroughs of the process. So either the application process, and if you watch it, it'll tell you exactly how to apply as a self-employed person, because I will be honest, some of the questions when you're walking through unemployment as a self-employed person, you're like, I don't even know how to answer this. If your state has a walkthrough, which a lot of them do, just go Google your state unemployment office, find their website, and just spend some time on it, because a lot of this stuff is answered out there, and it is going to vary by state, because states have latitude in a lot of this to make their own decisions on how they do this. Not every state answers these questions, though, and that's where it becomes interesting. And even if you call, those people don't always have the answers. I will say this, and this is true about unemployment, this is true about PPP, this is true about all this relief. And you guys are probably feeling this, so you know it, right? There is not a great level of understanding about how true small business sole proprietorships, independent contractors actually work in reality. And so when they made these programs and opened them to these people, right, they have not thought through all the questions that a typical sole proprietor would have when they're doing this. And it's unfortunate, right? It's unfortunate. You'd think that you could just get some business owners in a room and hash out what questions they have, and then make sure that they're addressed on your FAQs. But unfortunately, that was not done. There's not a global set of standards for a lot of this stuff. So states are doing it on their own. Some are addressing it, some aren't. Some are still in the works. It's a whole mixed bag. But all of this, you're seeing a lot of the rules form on the back end of these programs are open, and then they're scrambling to figure out what the rules are, which makes it really hard when you're able to apply for something and you don't know the rules yet. That's true for unemployment. That's true for PPP. That's true for all of them, because we're just applying for stuff to try to get some money. And the rules and the actual like detailed regulations are lagging behind. And so you're making a decision with half information today that you are trying to figure out how that's going to impact you in the future. And there's only so much we know. And so that's the hard thing about the situation that we're in, is like, how do you make decisions with half information? And so I'm here to give you and help you make those decisions and give you the information that we do have, but also know what we don't know. And so, in some ways it can be a little bit of a gamble, which is really unfortunate. And I hope that they start getting some good rules around this stuff soon. Okay, let's see. So that's really, and I'm looking just to see what I can see. And I've got some questions on PPP, so I want to get to that. Okay, real quick. No, and I'm assuming this is talking about what's available to sole proprietors. There is actually a lot available. I know it feels like it's not being talked about as much or clear. There is a lot out there. You're not screwed. You just, it takes a little bit to wade through, unfortunately, right? To figure out what's best for you. There are options. So I need people to know that. I know that money is lagging. I know that you're like, hey, I filed for unemployment 6 weeks ago and I haven't gotten anything. I filed for that EIDL thing a month ago and I haven't gotten anything. I filed for PPP and I can't get the bank, to call me back. Like, I get all of that. And you're sitting here, almost 2 months into this whole thing, wondering where the heck the money is going to come from. It's flowing. It's just taking a while. And I'm not going to defend that at all. It's taking a while. People are starting to get money. I'm seeing it every day. It is happening. Hold tight. Don't lose hope. There will be help. And I do think that there will be further rounds of relief that that will come, maybe not in the same form, maybe not another round of PPP, but maybe something else. So we need to kind of be looking for that. Okay. All right. So I'm going to jump into PPP real quick, because I'm getting a ton of questions about that. And we can talk about it. Okay. So let's talk about PPP. PPP, Paycheck Protection Program. If you don't know what it is a big deal. That is this quote unquote free money that the government is giving away. Now, it's not automatically free. You have to, on the back end of this, ask for forgiveness. There are a lot of rules around how you have to use it to get it forgiven. any portion that is not forgiven becomes a loan over 2 years. You start paying it 6 months from now. It's a 1% loan over 2 years if it's not forgiven. Not all the forgiveness rules are fully flushed out. I have about 1 million questions about it. There's enough. One of my gripes about PPP is this. I think the intention of the program is good. They want to save jobs. That's the whole point. PPP, by the way, it's not to make the banks to make money. It's not to give you low interest loans. It is to save jobs. They want to be able to quote how many jobs they saved. They want to get people off of unemployment. Okay. That's really what PPP is for. So I think the intention is good. I think what they did though was they made something that was so complicated that now there's a lot of and then they didn't, if you're going to make something complicated, okay, all right, they're trying to put parameters in place on the usage of this, and I understand that, so that it accomplishes the end goal. That's why. But what they did then was they rolled out this complicated process, and then they didn't give all the parameters around the specifics, right? There's so many things we don't know. And that leads to so many questions and distrust in people's mind. I understand. They're like, well, I'm worried about taking this because I'm worried that even despite best efforts to get this thing forgiven, I'm going to do something wrong and they're going to not forgive me on the back end, right? Or like some new rules are going to come out 3 weeks from now, and I already made decisions based on what I thought were the rules, and now I can't get forgiven. I understand all of that. Honestly, I understand all of that because I don't know how this is going to work out. I don't know how lenient it's going to be. And what I have seen is that the banks are all over the place. Like some of the banks weren't even calculating the loan correctly, which is scary. So what does that mean for you as the end user on the back end when you're trying to get forgiveness when your loan wasn't even calculated correctly? So there's a lot with this one that I have issues with. I do think that the intention was noble. I think the execution has been flawed. And I think the fact that the rules are lagging, right? They're so focused on right now on just getting money out to people that they're not focused on, dotting their I's and crossing their T's with regards to the rules around it. But yet they're telling people, hey, by the way, as soon as you get the money, right? As soon as that money drops in your account, that's day one. That's day one of your 8 weeks. You have 8 weeks to spend this money in the ways they want you to spend it to get it forgiven. You don't have to spend it in that 8 weeks. But again, anything you don't spend in that 8 weeks is not forgiven. So that is where it starts getting complicated, that you're like, well, wait a second. I've had so many people asking me, okay, so if I pay payroll, but part of my payroll run is from before I got the loan and part of it's after, does the whole thing count because I paid the whole payroll? Now you guys don't have to deal with payroll as sole proprietors, but that's the question, right? Or if I paid back rent, if the rent was due from April, but I got my PPP in May, but I paid it in May, does that count? There is no good guidance yet. And so it makes it really difficult for you guys to make decisions. So anyway, all that is to say, that was a long way to say guidance is still forthcoming. I do think you can, as a sole proprietor, you're actually in a good spot. And here's what I'll tell you. If you're a sole proprietor that has no employees, which with many sole proprietors do not have any employees, right? The good thing for you is this. You will essentially be, and I hesitate to use the word automatically. It's not going to be automatic necessarily. You're still going to have to ask for forgiveness, but you will be forgiven. Your forgiveness is not based on a payroll run. Your forgiveness is not based on even the checks you write yourself, right? So I've gotten that question a lot. Like, okay, do I have to document like how much I pay myself and then like show them my bank statements? Like, what is this going to look like on the back end? The way it works for sole proprietors is that you will be forgiven for 8 50 seconds. Really, really straightforward, right? 8 50 seconds of your 2019 Schedule C net profit. How much you made in your business. Okay, line 31, Schedule C in your tax return. 8 50 seconds. So why the heck 8 50 seconds? Well, there's 52 weeks in a year, and the forgiveness period is 8 weeks. So they don't want you to pay yourself that whole amount of the loan, right? So if you get a loan for more than that, right, which in many cases you will, they don't want you to pay all of it to yourself because that would be considered a windfall. You would actually technically be making more than you normally would over that 8 weeks. So that's why they came up with this whole 8 50 seconds formula. It basically is like 15.38% of your 2019 Schedule C net profit. That's your pay to yourself that is forgiven once you apply for forgiveness. You should not, based on Treasury guidance, interim final rule, the one that was released on the 14th of April, as a sole proprietor, you should not have to provide bank statements. You should not have to show all of this. It should be based on purely a calculation. That makes sense to me. The whole idea of like documenting money you paid yourself was ridiculous for a lot of reasons for a sole proprietor. So it seems like the Treasury understands that and said, okay, no, it's a formula. That's what you get forgiven. That's your payroll to yourself. Okay. That said, your bank, and this is where I get scared, because I saw banks completely going against Treasury guidance in a lot of ways. And I don't think it was to go against it. I think it was just negligence and not keeping up, not negligence, but can't think of the word I'm looking for, but ignorance. Like they just didn't really know the rules well. And this has all been so fast that they were asking for the wrong things. They didn't really understand sole proprietors. There was a lot that was wrong. Some people got, like I said, wrong loan amounts where they couldn't include their own owner pay when they should have been able to. It was a mess. So it worries me for the back end of this. So I can't tell you right now sitting here, you definitely won't have to show proof of payment to yourself. You shouldn't, based on Treasury rules. What your bank decides to ask you for is a different story. So keep records is what I can tell you to do, but it should be a calculation based on your net profit, not the checks you write yourself or transfers you do from your business to your personal. Because again, let's say you need that money in your business, right? Like let's say you've got to pay some independent contractors with that money, right? And they're going to force you to pay yourself with it instead. So you got to pay yourself, document that. And then if it were me, I'd just put another capital contribution. I'd do an owner contribution back into the business as a sole proprietor and then pay the independent contractors. And by the way, all of that, like none of your distributions aren't what dictates your taxes, right? That's not what, as a sole proprietor, that's not what dictates your taxes. So anyway, long way to say 850 seconds, 2019 net profit is what you will be forgiven for. You should not need to show records. Some banks might make you anyway, so keep them. And hopefully there'll be even more very specific guidance directly to the bank saying you don't need to ask for anything. Now, on this point, I got a lot of questions around this. A lot of people on their PPP loan. So the way you're supposed to calculate a PPP loan as a sole proprietor with no employees, 2019 net profit amount, line 31, Schedule C. We've talked about this a lot, right? Divided by 12. So get your average monthly payroll. That's your average monthly payroll for yourself times 2.5. Okay. 2.5 months worth, right? That's what the total loan that you were offered should be if you have no employees. A lot of banks only are offering the 850 seconds number, i.e. the 8 weeks of payroll. Why, you ask? Because the Treasury even states in a lot of cases, the PPP loan is you're not going to have a lot of those other expenses if you're a sole proprietor, right? If you're a sole proprietor, independent contractor, you may not have rent, utilities, all of that for business reasons. Or if you do, it might be very small. In which case, the banks would rather just give you the 8 weeks of payroll. And then, basically there's going to be a lot less work for them to do on the back end to forgive that loan. Because all you got was the 8 weeks payroll anyway. It's assumed that that's going to be your payroll. They can probably just quickly stamp it, done, you're forgiven. If you get more than that, then they got to ask to see your rent payments and your calculation for this, that, and the other. And a lot of banks don't want to deal with that. So some of you guys were in that situation where I think PayPal was even doing this for sole proprietors where they just offered you that. Or in some cases, they might have offered you a hybrid where they offered you that 850 seconds amount. Plus, if you gave them, they might have asked you what's your rent, what's your utilities, that kind of stuff. They may have then calculated that and given you whatever portion you actually had, such that you wouldn't be in a situation later where there was a portion that wouldn't be forgiven. Okay, so that's really why a lot of the banks don't want you. They don't want to deal with a $500 unforgiven amount it costs them more to service that loan than they're going to make at 1% interest, right? Like think about how much 1% interest is on $500, right? They don't want to nobody wants to deal with that. They would rather forgive you. This is not like a crazy money-making scheme for the banks, right? To not forgive you. So I think a lot of people are worried like, oh, they're not going to want to forgive me because they're going to want that loan money. It's 1% interest over 2 years. Banks aren't making anything off of this. And oh, by the way, they would rather get it forgiven because then they get their money back from the government, right? So it's not a scheme. Banks are going to want to forgive your loan. They're not going to want to have like a small amount, which is why a lot of sole proprietors only are getting offered that 8 weeks of payroll. It's up to you. In a lot of cases, you can request and say, no, I want the 2.5 times payroll. But what I will say is this. It has blown my mind how many people are getting loan offers and they have zero idea how those loans were calculated. And that scares me for you. Because if you're getting a loan offer and you have no clue how they got to the amount on that piece of paper, but yet 8 weeks from now, you're going to have to come back and prove something for forgiveness, that's a problem. So no, go try to ask them. If you can't get an answer, try to figure out how they're getting to it. How are they getting to that amount, right? What is it? Why, if your calculation is different, try to figure out why. It could be maybe because they'll limit your wages to 100,000. So if you make more than 100,000 on your net profit on your Schedule C, okay, you can't pay yourself more than 8 weeks of $100,000, if that makes sense. So they'll cap it at that. So I think the most you can make is like 15,000 and some change. That's the max you can pay yourself as a sole proprietor over those 8 weeks. So that's important to know, but know how they calculated your loan so that you know what you're going to have to do to prove forgiveness on the back end. Also, I'm getting the question of, this is my very astute people, so I'm proud of this question. They're like, well, wait a second, I thought I had to spend 75% on payroll. If I work out 8/52 of my income, that only comes out to specifically 73.8%. That's 73.8%. Meaning you won't hit, as a sole proprietor with no employees, you won't hit the 75% of your loan going to payroll. You won't hit it. That's okay. It's silly and dumb, and they've made it very confusing, but it's okay. You'll be forgiven for 8/52. They won't hold that piece against you. I'm assuming the rest of that is going to be eligible for other expenses, anything above the 8/52, and that will be, they're not going to like penalize you for 1.2% that you didn't hit. So, but it is, they have, all right, I'll stop. I was going to go on another diatribe. I'm not going to, because I've already been on 37 minutes and I promised myself I was only going to do a 30-minute. So let me look through your questions here for PPP specifically. Okay. So this is where a lot of you guys are. You got an offer for PPP. Do you sign it? You think you're going to qualify for more through PUA, right? And then you are, okay, so 514. So you're in that spot that a lot of people are like, I haven't gotten my PUA yet. I'm assuming I'm going to get it. And it would be more than PPP, but do I just take PPP because that's what they're offering me? And it just depends on a lot of your particular situation, how different that dollar amount is, how worried you are about PUA coming through, right? That's where it's going to get tough. And you can't so here's the thing. A lot of people are like, well, can't I just do both? Here's what I'll tell you about that. The whole point, I'll say it again, the whole point of PPP is to get people off of unemployment. They want people to hire back workers, get them off unemployment. And they want you to pay them similar to what they were paid before so that they won't qualify for unemployment, right? And they want to pull the burden off of the unemployment system, which is breaking, in all honesty, right now, and put it more on the employers to keep their people and pay them that way. It's just switching where the funds come from to pay people, right? That's what they want to do. I don't think they're gonna look kindly on people that try to double dip in any way. And there are some things I think are okay, but there are some things that I think when you start going down the rabbit hole of trying to make this work out and game the system in all kinds of ways, remember what I said, which is the rules on all of this are lagging behind the implementation, meaning 3 weeks from now, if you're like, you know what, I'm just going to use this PPP money as a loan. I'm not even going to take any payment from it. I'm just going to keep it as a loan. I'm going to pay it back over my 2 years, and I'm going to keep drawing unemployment. That's what I've heard a lot of people say. I can totally see 3 weeks from now, the Treasury coming out and saying, you can't do that, and that's unemployment fraud, or you have to give back your unemployment money, and it becomes a whole. So I don't know that will happen, right? And there may be people that double dip and they get off just fine and lucky for them, right? But I do not think that is the intention of this. Now, an exception. If you're a sole proprietor, right, you're getting that 850 seconds. That's assumed they will assume that you're making that over those 8 weeks, right? You can't just pay yourself 1 week that amount and then the other 7 weeks claim unemployment and say I didn't make any money. Like, that's not going to work. It's that 850 seconds is income ratably over every week. So if you take the amount of your PPP, or if you take that 850 seconds amount that you're forgiven for your payroll, and you divide it out and you figure out, okay, that's only $150 a week, maybe your PPP was really small. And you go to certify unemployment and you put that $150 in, which is what you would have to do, right? To say I made other income of $150. My dog's trying to get in here. Sorry. Other income of $150. And in some, like, if you win the lottery, they're like, oh, actually, you still qualify because that's under the amount that would cause you to DQ yourself. Somebody told me this the other day. I'm like, girl, she's like, is that double dipping? Is that wrong? I'm like, you claimed it as you were supposed to, and you still qualified. I think you win the lottery. Like, I think you know, but it's a thin line. It's a thin line to try to get both. And I don't necessarily recommend doing that. I recommend picking the one that's best for you. Okay. But it doesn't mean it's impossible if you claim that money and but like I said, some states you can't make more than like $50, in which case, if you took PPP, you definitely wouldn't get unemployment. Some states it's a couple $100. So you have to know what those limits are, and you have to know what your payroll is and calculate that out for you specifically, right? Which I know sounds awful and not fun, but if you wanted to go down that route, I would recommend doing that and making sure that you will be within the limits and you're not going to accidentally disqualify yourself from what would actually be more lucrative. Okay. So this is a good question. Okay. So here's what I want to say about this, because we're getting a lot of questions around, okay, I work from home. Can I deduct my rent, utilities, mortgage interest, blah, blah, blah? Generally, no. And the intention in the Treasury guidance, again, you guys can go check out the interim final rule. Go to treasury.gov is a great place. And then go click all the stuff that tells you to go to where the COVID-19 materials are. And there's some good stuff out there. It's not super fun to read, but it is helpful if you're trying to find the answer. And you want to see actually how it's written, right? Like I'll explain things to you in my interpretation, but again, some of this is open to interpretation. So I have to caveat that. If you go out there and go to 414, there is a interim final rule that is talking about sole proprietors specifically. And so when you go in there, when it talks about rent and utilities and all of that, it specifically mentions, like, if you have a warehouse where you store things outside of your home and you're paying for that, right? It does not give you parameters around claiming a portion of your home or a portion of your utility bill, right? Like, you could not do the whole thing. Like, you definitely couldn't do that, but it doesn't even talk about a portion. But it also does go on to say that you have to be eligible for a business deduction for such a thing. So there is an argument to be made, and some banks may allow this and some banks won't, unless they come out with specific guidance. Some banks may allow you to say, look, here's my utility bill. I'm going to calculate out the business portion just as I do for my taxes at the end of the year, right? The exact same, like, okay, 25% of my telephone bill is business, and you have documentation for that, again, just like you would need to for your tax deduction. Some banks may allow it. But again, until they are more specific around this, I'm telling people, don't count on that. Don't count on them being able to, and more than likely, right? How big is a quarter, even half of your cell phone bill? It's not going to go a heck of a long way to being forgiven for PPP. It's a help, but I mean, it's going to be a drop in the bucket. So know that Some banks may allow it unless they come out saying specifically this is allowed and here's how to calculate it. It's open to interpretation by the banks. And I don't know that a lot of banks want to sit there and sift through how you calculated your home office deduction as a portion of your mortgage interest. Like that just, it's going to get real complicated. Again, this is a lot of the reason that they only gave to a lot of sole proprietors that 850 seconds, and they didn't give them the 2.5 times payroll because they said, if you're home based, we don't want to deal with that. Like we don't want to deal with you trying to get deductions for this other stuff, right? Okay. Getting some questions on EIDL, which I will touch on here in just a minute. Okay, I got the PPP loan. Let's see. So it deposited into the wrong checking account. I mean, I would imagine you have to provide that. Most banks you have to provide that. You may, because some of them are sending loan docs on the back end once you're approved that you have to sign the loan docs. Some are not. Some are actually when you go through though and do your application the first time, there's probably something that you check or a box or whatever, it's somewhere in the fine print that says, I agree to accept this loan if it's approved, in which case they wouldn't necessarily make you sign documents on the back end. Different banks are different in how they're handling it. But yeah, I mean, they should be asking that bank where that money goes. You should be telling them that. So I don't know. I mean, I guess if it's your bank, maybe they were just using whatever they had on file, but okay. Let's see. Okay, I'm just looking to see. Okay. The other thing important to know for PPP, right? If you did get the whole 2.5 times payroll, but you don't have those other expenses as a sole proprietor, you can hire somebody for the rest of that money. You have to pay them on payroll. It can't be an independent contractor. You'd have to go and you can use something like Gusto. And if you guys are interested in that, I have some posts in the group and I have an affiliate link for Gusto too, but it's super easy. Like Gusto is really easy. balancecfo.com/Gusto if you want to check it out. But it's like $50 a month or something for them to run payroll for one person. You can onboard them through there. They will update, the person you're hiring would just give their W-9 and all that information into the form. Into the form. My brain just went somewhere. But yeah, it'll do it all for you. So you could do something like that and you can go hire someone. And even if it's just for a period of time, you go hire someone to redesign your website and put them on payroll. You have to make sure they're okay with being a W-2 employee and that makes sense, right? And, there are some other things you need to probably look into for your state around what's required if you have an employee. Do you need to pay unemployment insurance, blah, blah, blah. But you can go hire somebody with that money if you want to. So that's an option. If you're worried about either having to give that money back, better to spend it, use it for something that's going to help your business, right? That's what I would say. A lot of people are asking well, can I just give the money back? I'm like, go use it for something, even if your employees are sitting at home watching Netflix, there are things that they can be doing that would help your business from home. Okay. Let's see. You receive PPP for your business. You have a part-time job too that you were furloughed from. Can you get unemployment in the 600 for it depends on how, probably not, because PPP is going to count as income. Remember that. So if you're a sole proprietor, that 8 weeks, you got to calculate that out. Whatever that 8 weeks of payroll is to you, you have to claim that every week, the amount. So if your PPP is only $150 a week when you average it out, then maybe you could still do unemployment for your other job, but there is a good chance that it would be too much, such that you would not be eligible for both. So that's why I say you got to, before you do PPP, pick which one makes the most sense for you. And I know a lot of people are realizing now, they did PPP because there was this huge rush to PPP and they were afraid they were going to miss out on money. And now are realizing shoot, actually I would have been better on unemployment. Can I give the money back? Right now, I don't know of any mechanism to be able to do that. And I don't know, again, if they're going to let you just be able to hand it all back and say, well, I'm going to do unemployment instead. I don't know. They may say if you have PPP as a sole proprietor, you are essentially presumed to be paying yourself with that, and therefore you cannot be on unemployment. I don't know. They haven't said specifically, but I would be careful making any assumption that is counter to that. I would rather assume the more conservative thing, right? And then see what ends up happening on the back end of this. Okay. Yeah. So some ideas. I mean, the biggest idea I have is go hire somebody. Go find somebody to hire, put them on payroll. And I know that sounds overwhelming for a lot of people, but I'd rather you do that than turn it into a loan, right? Or use it on other things. It's not as intimidating, as you think, and it can be a really good usage of the money. Okay. Can apply for PPP and then PPP. Yes. What would that work if needed? Yes. Okay. So timing. Even if you get PPP, if you've been out of work for a while, you guys, even if you've already gotten PPP, I still want you to go apply for PUA. Here's why. When your state opens it, and it's different for every state on how this is going to work, but they should be allowing back pay to when you closed your business. And that's different. Again, how far back is being determined by the states, how far back they're going to go. But I want you to go apply for it. Then what you would do is you would get off of it or stop certifying it or whatever, right? When you have that PPP, you wouldn't collect unemployment anymore while you have PPP, and then you can get back on it after. Okay. So don't feel like because you took PPP, you can't get paid for those back amounts. You can. And if you haven't applied or you're waiting, make sure that you do that. And again, the specifics on how that's going to work is going to vary by state, but I recommend going and getting that back pay, then getting your 8 weeks. And then if you need to, if you still are not open and you still are in a position where you don't have money, get back on it. Again, the extra $600 goes through the end of July. PUA itself, right, meaning unemployment being open to self-employed people, goes through the end of December. So, and it's different on your state how many weeks, but they added an extra 13 weeks too. So, even the lowest states like Florida, I think, is one of the lowest. You're still eligible for 25 or 26 weeks total. A lot of states you're eligible for up to 39 weeks now. So feasibly, you could probably be on unemployment the rest of the year if you're not working, if there's reason. Now, I'm interested to see how this goes and if the rules change state-wise. Right now, they can't kick you off unemployment. They can't kick you off PUA and say, well, your business could open right now, so you can't be on PUA anymore. I'm interested to see if the states challenge that at all. And they say, well, because we don't have a stay-at-home order anymore, you can no longer collect. Right now, that's not the case. They can't force you. And if it doesn't make business sense for you to be out there working, and if your job can't really be done, well, social distancing, or if you just don't have anybody that's going to hire you, right? I know somebody who's a caterer and they're like, yeah, I'm not getting any jobs right now and probably won't be for the foreseeable future. Nobody wants to do get-togethers. So, in that case, you can stay on it. You don't have to, just because your state opens back up, it doesn't mean there's business for you. It doesn't mean you're employed again, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Let's real quick. I know there's more PPP, and so I'm sorry that I know I missed some people's questions, but I want to talk real quick about EIDL because it is something that is on people's minds right now. Oops, let me get rid of this comment real quick. I know it's something that's on people's minds. So EIDL, real quick. A lot of you guys are getting what this is: economic injury disaster loan. For those who haven't heard of it, this is the loan. Well, it's a disaster loan, but it comes with an advance. And that advance is a grant. So many words, so many confusing things. That advance is a grant. You get that. It's $1,000 per employee. You will get it. So if you're a sole proprietor, you should get $1,000. If you're a sole proprietor with no employees, you still get $1,000. A lot of people have gotten those. A lot of people haven't. At this point, again, it's May 1st. I've heard of people in the April 2nd through April 4th seem to be getting them right now, but it isn't fully based on the timing. It seems like there's a lot of issues. So if you applied for that and you applied on the 29th, the 30th, the 31st, or the 1st of April right now, if you applied a month ago or earlier, and you haven't called the SBA, I want you to call them. And I want you to ask for a Tier 2 representative. I don't have the phone number memorized. I probably should. Ask for a Tier 2 representative. The reason I'm telling you that is because in some cases, your loan they may have had a banking issue where they couldn't validate your banking information. And sometimes that happens even more specifically with sole proprietors because of the fact that like your social and your bank account and the name of your business may not all be in alignment. And so they may have trouble like matching it all up. Call and see. And then you can hopefully update your bank account. And it's still taking a while to process after that, but at least that way, because they're not telling people proactively that that's the issue. They're just processing through as many people as they can. And then I think they're going to go back to the ones they had issues with. So if you applied after like the first or second, just wait it out because it'll be here. It'll come. It's taking a long time. So that 3 days that they promised us in the CARES Act, not so much. So yeah, I would wait on that. But that advance is good, and that's yours. That's your money to keep and use in pretty much a lot of different ways, right? Your operating expenses, you can use it pretty broadly in your business. Now, don't go like buy a bunch of equipment with it. It's not meant for expansion, right? It's meant to maintain your business during a difficult time. It's a disaster loan. Okay, so make sure you're not using it for marketing. Make sure you're using it to pay costs you wouldn't otherwise be able to pay. And that can include yourself as well. It does get a little bit complicated, but that can include yourself. You don't have to prove anything for forgiveness on this, but I do recommend keeping records because I imagine that at the end of this, they're going to start spot checking all of these things. And you never know if they're going to ask you like, hey, prove what you spent this on. And you want to make sure that it's one of the things that is acceptable to be able to spend it on. And it is more broad. I mean, it's general like cash flow type requirements that you can use it for. And you don't have to use it over 8 weeks or anything like that. It's just to help you in your business. On the back end of that process, they may also offer you a loan. How that's going to work, we just need to see. Those are very delayed. So right now, if you haven't gotten to your advance yet, and even people who have gotten their advance, it's still maybe a couple weeks before you hear anything on whether you're being offered a loan or not. And that loan would need to be paid back. It would be paid back over 30 years at 3.75% interest. I don't really recommend that a lot of sole proprietors get that, the actual loan anyway, because unless you have like rent or utilities or something that you have to pay. Otherwise, just try to cut your costs as much as you can and get on unemployment or take PPP. That's what I would say is a better route than the EIDL loan for a sole proprietor. But the advance is a grant. Now, if you got the PPP, this is where it gets interesting. I did a post yesterday about why this is confusing, right? If you get PPP, you also got the EIDL advance. It just showed up one day, which is what's happening to people. You're wondering how does that affect my PPP? To be determined fully. So the guidance is a little ambiguous in how it's written. And I did a post on this yesterday to try to explain what I meant by that, which just is to say it's unclear if you can just use it on different things, i.e. I used my EIDL advance for this and I used my PPP for this, and then you wouldn't have to do anything and then you can keep them both, or if they're going to make you reduce your PPP forgiven amount by the amount of your EIDL advance. So if you got a $10,000 PPP loan and you used it correctly and it should be fully forgiven, but you had a $1,000 advance you may have to reduce that. And therefore you'd only get $9,000 forgiven, which would mean $1,000 would turn into a amount you would have to pay back either immediately or over that 2 years at 1% interest, whichever you would choose. So to be determined, Treasury has got to clarify that, whether that's a choice or whether it's a requirement that the advance gets subtracted off of it. Right now, it's a little bit up in the air, but I'm hoping that you'll be able to keep it as long as you show that you used it differently. But again, until like banks may take even different views on this. All right, so I'm about to hit my hour, so I need to jump on out because I have another live that I'm getting ready to go on, and I need to go drink some water. And I see you guys are having conversations. Good, so you guys can hopefully answer some of your own questions in there. I'll take a look back too. Okay, so I don't see anything. So yeah, I mean, this is the question. People are gonna. I mean, I don't envy you guys as business owners to be figuring out how in the world you do this, right? Like, how in the world do you make this work in the post-COVID world? What is this even going to look like? How do you make money? It's crazy. So I'm here to help. Money is flowing. Try to get as creative as you can. Try to cut as many expenses as you can. Don't rely on the government money. And make sure that you're making assumptions that are conservative so that you're not surprised, right? Also important, make sure you're withholding money for taxes. Unemployment is taxable, you guys, okay? Make sure you're withholding money for those taxes. In a lot of cases, you can have the state withhold it for you. So that's something I recommend doing. So just FYI, make sure that you're doing that on the back end too. Because what I don't want to happen is people get surprised later, right? You make decisions now because you need the money now, and then this comes back to haunt you. So that's why doing the things you need to do to make sure you get things forgiven, making sure that you're saving for taxes, making sure that you understand how all of this is going to work in the future, because I'm worried about what this is going to mean for people later if they don't kind of plan now. Okay. So that is, I think, all I had. I'm just checking my notes to make sure that I got everything. And I think I did. So great. Let me know what other questions that you guys have. Continue to send people to this group, Financial Literacy for Women Business Owners. I'm going to keep showing up for you guys. Sorry for the late notice on this one, but I just wanted to kind of talk to my sole proprietors for a little while, because I know you guys have a very specific circumstance. So I hope you feel hope. I hope you know that money is coming. I hope you know there is help out there. I hope you know I'm going to be here to help you find answers. Even when the answers don't exist yet, or they are a little bit fluid. I'm trying to keep up to date with all of this for you so I can give you the best information that you can so that you can find money to feed your families and to pay your bills. So best of luck. Hope you all have a great weekend, and I'll see you later.